Hello and welcome to my Trippl3 Cybersecurity Weekly Roundup. My name is Clinton Walker, and in this week's episode I'll be covering 3 cyber breach, 3 sets of countermeasures, and 3 takeaways for your board, your stakeholders, and your business owners. The first up is the Nissan Auto Group, and Nissan disclosed that they've been suffering a breach. They've suffered a breach, and they've been going through the negotiations with the ransomware extortion group Everest, and negotiation broke down, and this group decided to disclose all the negotiation details, paperwork, and materials relating to the negotiation. Bear in mind, this is not the first time Nissan's been breached. They've been breached twice in 2025 and in 2023 and in 2024, and more recently here in April 2026. Now, the likely cause here that they're disclosing and saying is that is some compromise of network devices and the internal controls were breached, and that's how they got into their system. The data involved over 900 gig of data, which included internal data, negotiation logs, and claims referencing litigation, as well as larger data sets. Now, the issue here in terms of the impact is a lot, because you're looking at reputational damage, employee details, which could lead to identity theft, and also what's called business email compromise, which is as a result of a phishing attack, plus other litigation aspects as well. So what are some of the countermeasures that could be put in place here for them? If they were in place, that is, and if they were, maybe they weren't as strong enough. Multi-factor authentication, and that's something you know, something you have, and something you are. They could also segment their network and protect their backup and make sure that there's immunity around their backup as and when they need to instigate that. Monitor all unusual file accesses across the network and look for where data is being exfiltrated from the organization. And they could use tools such as DLP, data loss prevention tools. Now, that's the first breach. The second breach is with Cisco, which again, most of you know that they are well known for network infrastructure, network devices, etc. And this actually occurred through their supply chain. This is a supply chain breach whereby a third party of theirs, which is called Trippl3, which is a vulnerability scanner system, they were breached, and attackers compromised their GitHub access and GitHub pipeline details and credentials, which they also used to spread and propagate the malware through official releases. When you talk about official releases, these were releases that were checked and it was passed as okay to release, but the level of breach shows how clever and witty these attackers were, because if it was packaged in an official way to push, the chances are it's probably not going to be picked up if they pass through the gateway checks as well. The likely impact here in terms of the data that was involved, let's talk about that. The data that was involved included AWS keys and keys that has access to all of their other platform services and hosting environments as well, which also has follow-on impact on all the other entities and clients that were also on those environments as well. The impact here is that it was a lot of downtime was suffered by developers. Their labs and all the work that they did in their labs were also compromised, and all their workstations were also compromised. So what are some of the countermeasures that could be in place here to help them to protect or prevent that from happening? Well, if they'd done a robust security check in terms of code integrity, that would have probably picked up some of those malware and traces or any kind of issues regarding that particular release, but it would have seemed that was done in a covert way, so that it was not picked up. What it can do as well is to tighten the controls around third parties and third party integration. And this really brings to the surface the importance of third party security and due diligence. Make sure that all integration and touch points and systems are properly vetted and checked for good security posture. Continuously monitor all build pipelines and check again before you push your release. Monitor access controls for highly privileged users such as super admin, developers, etc. for unusual activities. The final breach that I want to touch on is one that's called SATS AS, and this is a Nordic fitness and training company, and they're huge across the Nordic. And some people may say, well, it's a fitness company, it's a gym, etc. What's there to steal? But bear in mind that you take photos for accessing gyms nowadays. You got a swipe card, you give them all the details. Well, they were compromised, and they disclosed that their IT system was compromised, and they said that they quickly contained the situation, but they have actually reached out to IT's cybersecurity expert to help them to assess the scope and the level of impact. How did this happen? Well, the compromise of credentials for users were one of the main routes into the system, and that was between the administrators and normal users of the system. So something was compromised along that point. And the preliminary findings showed that the documents that were disclosed were contractual documents, personal information relating to employees, and some other information relating to some of the customer data set as well. So the impact here again is business risk disruption, potential identity theft, potential phishing attack on customers as well as employees alike, because if they compromise that system, chances are their email address would have been there, their name, telephone number, address, and maybe a photo of their passport or some form of identity verification as well. So what are some of the controls that could be put in place here? Multi-factor authentication, again, a theme here with multi-factor authentication. Restrict employee data and admin documents in terms of the level of access, and only give access and allow employees to access the details or the files that they need to know, and make sure that it's on a role-based basis. So access files based on your role that you're doing in the company, as well as if you're administrator, then you probably have a lot more access to see and monitor and manage those privileges as well. Monitor unusual downloads, file exports, and large movement of files across systems externally and internally, to make sure you have visibility as to what's going on, and that way you can pick up on anomalies and any issues there. So that's the final breach for this week. So what are some of the tips that you can take away as business owner, a stakeholder, or board member? Well, strong multi-factor authentication is very important. That's at the heart of accessing systems and resources. Make sure that's enabled on all systems, all endpoints as well, if it is feasible. It's not always feasible. Make sure that you have data loss prevention systems in place. So that data loss prevention tool are tools that actually monitors what is happening with your data all across the network and outside of the network. So if someone is trying to download a big file or download a file on a gradual basis and sending it via email, sending it by file sharing, you have visibility of that as well, so you can really zoom in and monitor what's going on here. And typically, that will give you some insights as to what's happening with the data. Now, ensure that you have a robust incident response system in place, so that if something like this were to happen, you can respond to it quickly, efficiently, and it's also fit for purpose to help you to recover as soon as possible. Make sure that your backup is all intact as well and is readily accessible and usable. Segment your network as well. So depending on the level of systems and the complexity or the high sensitivity of the system on the network, make sure that those are segmented accordingly, with the right users having the right access to that. That's the update for this week. Thank you for your time, and remember to follow us and support us on LinkedIn, subscribe to us on YouTube, and visit our website for more information. Until then, have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.